Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Packaging Europe podcast. My name is Elisabeth Skura. I'll be your host today. So today we're zooming in on the ever-relevant topic of plastic waste and how the challenge can be addressed. And the Alliance to End Plastic Waste sets out to drive system change by harnessing the power of collective action by developing, de-risking and demonstrating solutions that address the plastic waste challenge, catalyzing capital and strengthening collaboration across and outside the plastic value chain. So today, I'm very pleased to welcome the Alliance's President and CEO, Jacob Dorr. He'll discuss challenges and successes faced over the 5 years of the Alliance, new large-scale efforts to address plastic waste in 3 developing countries, and also catalyzing third-party capital. And he will also address the question of how manageable the challenge actually is, given the scale of the problem and the amount of virgin plastics that are still being produced. I really look forward to an interesting conversation. Welcome, Jacob, and thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Great to be here.
Thank you. And to get us started, for anybody who may not be familiar with the organization, could you talk a bit more about the Alliance to End Plastic Waste and what it does?
So we are a global non-profit organization that was established 5 years ago with the objective of contributing to putting an end to plastic waste entering the environment and truly creating a circular economy for plastic. What's unique about the Alliance is that we're really focused on action, and we're operating largely in emerging economies where we see a significant leakage of plastic waste into the environment, but also see huge opportunities in ensuring that that waste can be collected and truly brought into recycling through different types of recycling technologies. We're fully funded by the private sector, companies across the entire plastic value chain, which is committed to being part of creating solutions in this area. And we call ourselves, with a smile sometimes, a do tank. It's all about getting the work done at the national level, truly believing that we can make a significant contribution to solving for plastic circularity. We've recently gone through a major shift, I would say, in terms of how we are approaching our approach to working on the ground. We are focusing our efforts on infrastructure solutions. We believe that's one of the key areas that needs to be addressed in creating a circular economy and truly closing the collection gap. So our work is focused on efforts around waste sorting, waste collection, which is closely linked to that, of course, and then truly looking at bringing the valuable plastic back into the system through recycling. We believe in system change. We believe in scale. And that also means that our efforts are focused on a select number of countries in which we are operating in, and truly looking at system change, recognizing that there are a range of solutions that are required at the national level in order for us to truly drive impact and drive change.
And we'll get in a bit more into the new strategy a bit later in the podcast. But before that, I wanted to ask you, obviously the Alliance was set up back in 2019. And looking back, what would you consider the Alliance's biggest successes, and also what would have been the biggest challenges you faced in that time?
So we've gone through quite an evolution over the last 5 years or so since we started our operations. We have started off with operating in around 20 to 30 countries actually over the last 5 years or so. We've been running a portfolio of somewhere between 70 and 80 projects, all driving efforts towards change, bringing us a significant amount of learnings around what are the type of areas that we as an alliance from a comparative advantage add most value to, but also in which geographies can we really truly drive the type of change that we are promoting. In doing so, we of course always measure the way that we deliver our impact. So we have had and do continue to have an impact metrics in place that guides our efforts going forward. We've been focusing on a number of metrics over the years, from the amount of plastic waste that we have collected and recycle it, the number of jobs that have been created, but also importantly, the amount of financial resources that we have catalyzed through our partnership with others working in the countries where we have been operating. And one of the areas that is really important is to not only develop the type of solution that's required, but also identify the financial partners that are critical in order truly to blend financing, blend resources. So it's not only capital coming in from one organization, but looking at blending it with others that can be from development finance institutions. It can be from private sector capital and investments more broadly. But of course, it can also be from governmental resources. So going back to in terms of how we are looking at defining success, we see success not only in terms of the impact that we are driving, but also in terms of the capital that we have been able to generate. Particularly, let me maybe mention 2 examples of that. There are many others that can be highlighted, but one is in Indonesia, where we have been working with a local female-led and owned company that focuses on PET recycling in particular, where the Alliance has been providing a loan, and that loan has unlocked more than $40 million from a development finance institution. So limited resources from the Alliance, technical expertise and guidance unlock capital from others. And suddenly we're seeing a relatively large business model emerging that has the potential for not only replication, but also significant scaling over time in Indonesia and potentially elsewhere as well. Another example where catalytic capital has been fundamental in driving change is one of our projects that we have been supporting in Ghana. It's an organization. It's an NGO. It's a smaller social enterprise that is working with, that is female-led as well, and is looking at, in particular, informal waste collection, but also recycling. And here the Alliance, through our contribution to the organization called ASASE, has demonstrated a business model. And through that demonstration of business model, they have been able to unlock from the World Bank, that has actually issued what is called a World Bank Plastic Waste Reduction Linked Bond, additional financing in order for them to scale their model. So it's all about going in for the Alliance, and you alluded to it in your opening remarks as well, around de-risking, demonstrating how success and results can be created, and then unlocking capital on the market in order to replicate or scale those solutions.
And how would you say have learnings from the first 6 years shaped the Alliance's strategy?
Every day is a learning day for the Alliance, I always say. That means what we learned yesterday, we are trying to build into how we create solutions for tomorrow. And obviously over the years, over the 5 years that we have truly been in operation, there has been a tremendous amount of learnings for the Alliance and insights to what works, but also what does not work. And we think it's equally important to learn from what does not work in order to create the right solutions going forward. So as we have transitioned, in particular, as we have developed our new strategy, we have built in those learnings from the last 5 years, and that has truly now generated, we believe, a strategy that will not only drive impact, but it will drive impact at scale by focusing on a select number of geographies, of countries where we will be working. So really going from having worked relatively wide in a large number of countries to now narrowing positively our focus through priority setting, and then looking at investing our time, our technical expertise, and our financial resources into true system change at the national level. And I think one of the important learnings that we've taken with us over the years is that you need system change in order to truly drive change and impact at the national level. Of course, it always needs to be in line with national priorities, supported by enabling policies at the national level. But if we truly are to close the different gaps, when we talk circularity, you need to go in and positively contribute to closing those gaps in the system. And we can't do that in isolation, but need to do that in partnership with others. And that's why collaboration with others, not only the governments, but also other actors at the national level, is absolutely fundamental. So lots of changes, lots of learnings over the past 5 years. They have all been contributing to where we are today and how we have defined our strategy for the next 6 years.
I also wanted to ask you this. Obviously, there's been some criticism following an investigation from Greenpeace, I believe last year, saying that members of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste have been producing, I think it said 1,000 times more plastic than the Alliance has cleaned up in 5 years. And yeah, I just wanted to get your take on this. And do you think that the scale of the problem of how much plastic is produced and ends up as waste is actually manageable?
So we believe it is a solvable problem, right? We believe that solutions are not only existing out on the market, but solutions are also emerging, and that actors like the Alliance, but also many other actors that are operating in this space, particularly working with government, civil society organization, private sector companies, development finance institutions, the sum of all those efforts can truly make the change and can help solving for the problem that we all so much care about. So we believe and are convinced that with the efforts, allocation and utilization of technical knowledge and expertise, pooling of financial resources, that we can contribute to creating truly impact at scale. And linked to that is circularity, linked to that is waste management, waste collection and recycling. And we need to always remember that in order to truly create a circular economy, it's not enough just to close one gap. We truly need to close all the gaps. And that's where we as an organization come in, looking at some of the downstream measures that are critical to solve for in order to prevent the leakage into the environment, but also retain the value of plastic that otherwise ends up in the environment, in dump sites, in landfills, in incineration. That value is estimated at somewhere between $80 and $120 billion on an annual basis. That's a lot of resources, and those resources with the right type of solutions that are emerging on the market, they can actually be brought back into the system through the right type of collection solutions, but equally important through the right type of recycling solutions.
In a sort of similar vein, obviously in recent months, there have been several announcements, or it's become clear that several global brands have revised and reduced their sustainability commitments, particularly around reliance on virgin plastics, and recyclability and sustainability in general seems to have slipped down the agenda somewhat. Do you think we're still on track and we can still maintain momentum, even given some sort of headwinds currently?
No, absolutely. I think we can. And I think we are seeing that, as you know, governments are negotiating a treaty right now on addressing plastic pollution. And what we see here is a very strong participation by private sector companies in supporting efforts towards the treaty negotiations coming to a conclusion when governments are meeting in Geneva in just a few weeks from now in the beginning of August. So we continue to see a strong commitment from brands, but from all the different actors across the plastic value chain. Again, with a strong focus on circularity. And I think one of the 2 or 3 areas that the Alliance is focusing on in terms of how we can support those efforts and contributing to private sector companies truly meeting their sustainability targets and the goals that they have set is looking in particular at what we are calling the collection or the quantity gap when we talk circularity, recognizing that there is a lot of plastic waste out there, but unfortunately it sits in the wrong place. How can we get it into the system through the right type of collection and sorting systems, whether that is in the global north or in the global south? And then looking in this regard also at the quality gap. How do we ensure that the plastic that's being recycled has the type of design and quality so that it can be brought back into the system through, there are different types of recycling technologies, but also in particular when we are looking at brands brought back into packaging, ensuring that they comply not only with the targets that they have set themselves, but also the targets that we are seeing being set at the national or the regional level in terms of recycled content in packaging. So commitment is there, willingness is there, financial resources is there, but it's truly only if we come together as a community of actors, as we all contribute differently to solving for the problem, that we can make this a successful endeavor for everyone.
Yes, collaboration is so important, isn't it, across value chains and borders, etc. So yes, you hinted at the beginning of the podcast at it, and I wanted to find out a bit more about that now. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste is due to unveil new large-scale efforts to address plastic waste in 3 developing countries. And I was wondering if you could expand a bit more on these plans and tell me a bit more.
So part of our strategy shift is to focus our efforts in geographies where we can truly drive the biggest impact. What we have seen in recent years, and we believe that's very encouraging, is that we are seeing that national legislation and policies coming into place that's going to drive the right decisions and the right type of investments going forward from upstream to downstream. So as part of our efforts, the Alliance has initially identified 3 countries where we will be focusing our efforts going forward. That's Indonesia, India, and South Africa, where we are looking at the development of large-scale programs, working in partnership, obviously, with the governments in these countries, but equally important, working in partnership with development finance institutions that are committed to infrastructure investments in those countries, as well as working with private sector companies. And we see that constellation of actors as being critical, where the Alliance is, on one hand, a provider and contributor in terms of technical knowledge and expertise, building on the 5 years of work that we have had in many countries around the world. The fact that we're able to provide concessional capital into it, and then also that we have implementation experience in a range of countries, including in Indonesia, South Africa, and India. We're looking at large-scale programs. And when I say large scale, that for us means more than $100 million being invested. It's a combination of resources that are being provided by the Alliance being one financial contributor, but blending that capital with development finance institutions, private equity capital, or ideally also, and we are seeing that coming forward, national resources coming out of national budgets of governments. And if we can truly develop such large-scale programs, particular focus on infrastructure solutions in the Global South, looking at it from a system change perspective, not only can we demonstrate that solutions are existing, are implementable, but we are also demonstrating that they will drive impact at scale. Beyond our country programs, the Alliance is also focusing on what we call thematic programs. That's more focused on areas such as flexible films, and looking at it from a waste perspective, where we are looking more at advancing, de-risking new technologies, in particular around collection and sorting. We tend to work here more in the developed global north, where there are infrastructure, tendentially more in place, but where we want to test and try new sorting technologies in particular, so that we can optimize the outcome from the waste stream in terms of having better sorted and higher quality plastic waste coming out, and ultimately contributing better with higher quality plastic waste into the recycling streams, and therefore meeting the increasing demand for recycled content on the market. It's all about creating end markets as well. It is important that there is a demand for these recycled materials on the market. We're seeing that coming either through, as we talked about earlier, the commitments that have been made by private sector companies, or we're seeing that coming through legislation as well. So the programs are really fundamental for the Alliance, large-scale impact, looking at it in partnership with others. And while we have 3 programs identified and 3 countries identified now, we are planning to add another 2 to 3 countries that we will be working in over the next few years, with the aim of setting clear priorities in terms of where we can drive impact and truly move the needle in terms of change, but also looking at where can we drive capital to, so that we can get to a sizable program that truly will make a difference where it matters the most.
And that's a nice lead to my next question. Could you talk a bit more broadly about the Alliance's expansion of its work with government and development finance institutions to catalyze third-party capital and generally scale up the Alliance's impact?
So I think over the first few years of our existence, we tended to work more directly with partners at the national level, with organizations that could help us implement our ambition in the countries where we were working. And I think one of the important learnings has been that it needs to be done in collaboration. And government support at the national level and enabling policies at the national level is absolutely critical. We've seen that in Indonesia, which was one of our first countries to operate in. We've seen a very strong and very committed government that very early on, back in 2018, 2019, already put in place very ambitious policies around waste management in the larger context of waste, but with particular focus also on plastic pollution. And that has really been for us a very, very important driver. And we see that also today as we have expanded that partnership to work with the development finance institution. And it's the sum of our efforts, the right policies and the enabling policies, financial resources from DFIs and technical expertise and concessional capital from the Alliance that we truly believe can be the game changer at the national level. There are many that operate alone and they do important work, but we believe that if we truly need to move to work that drives change at scale, then it can't be done in isolation. And that's why those partnerships are so fundamental. And our other programs, and we are looking at India and South Africa, they are built up around the same model. We hope that will be the model for truly driving not only impact, but also replication. And we're seeing a similar model emerging in other priority countries that we're in the process of identifying. What we have seen over the last few years, and it has been supported positively by the treaty negotiations, is that the development finance institutions are increasingly committed to allocate resources to infrastructure with focus on waste management, not only on plastic waste because you can't solve for that in isolation, but waste management more broadly. So with the right policies, the development finance institutions are not only stepping up, but they're also stepping in being a leader and a driver for the change that governments are looking for. Very often what has been lacking for these partnerships to take off until now has been the technical expertise, and that's where the Alliance is coming in and bridging that knowledge gap and expertise gap and technical knowledge gap that otherwise had existed until now, I think, between many governments where the need is and the development finance institutions where the capital sit. So our strategy is built up around that: strong engagement with governments, strong engagement with development finance institutions, as well as local actors. But also going beyond development finance institutions, we need to look at other pools of capital. And the Alliance launched 2.5 years ago its own private equity fund on plastic circularity, working with Lombard Investment Managers, a private equity investment manager house that sits out of Switzerland, but with representation in different parts of the world. And they are running a private equity fund purely focused on investing into private sector companies that helps drive a circular economy for plastic. What we've been very encouraged to see is that the number of opportunities has grown significantly over the last few years. So this agenda has come from not being a strong focus from private equity to being now seen as a huge investment opportunity going forward. And this fund is just an example of multiple funds that have emerged over the last few years. And we will be seeing, I believe, more such funds emerging in different parts of the world as entrepreneurship, startups, and growth companies are really emerging really, really fast on the market. And it's all about driving the right type of investments to the right type of solutions that ultimately will help from upstream to downstream, from design to packaging, to waste collection, to refill and reuse, and ultimately also to recycling. So partnerships is fundamental. No one can solve for this alone. But if we pool our resources, our knowledge, and our expertise, then we can truly move the needle as a community of actors.
Sounds good. And we look forward to keeping up to date with the Alliance's work and seeing how it all goes. That leads me to my last question I had for you today. Looking to the future, what developments do you foresee in the coming years, or how do you see the timescales of the current projects panning out?
So our focus is on implementation. How do we drive our programs forward? Our work in Indonesia, India, and South Africa. Our work on flexibles. How do we potentially add another 2 or 3 countries to our programs over the next few years? How do we truly demonstrate through partnerships that we can drive impact at scale, and demonstrate truly what we believe that is a solvable problem? We can put an end to plastic waste in the environment, and that we can truly create a circular economy for plastic. So it's all about getting it done. Going back to how I started, the Alliance being a do tank, demonstrate that with the right type of solutions, with the right type of investments, we can solve for plastic waste and plastic circularity.
That's a great note to end this podcast on. That just leaves me to say thank you very much, Jacob, for being here today and for sharing your insights with me.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
And as always, a note to our listeners, please make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. Thank you very much. Goodbye.